Welcome back, everyone. I am the Depressed Eeyore, and this is Middara. So, before we dive into the story, let's talk a little bit about Shadow Lord, since I did just, hype him up and beat, and then thoroughly kill him in 3 turns. If I had not killed him, I would have triggered 2 events: Strange Form and Fickle Playthings. He would have attacked 4 times. It would have been on Shayless this round, which is not too big of a deal. But then it would also do an 8. It would teleport away from everyone. Now, thankfully, everyone's kind of clumped together, but essentially what it could have done is essentially teleport on top of people and essentially do some damage and then start blasting everyone with magic. A number of my characters did have wilt already, so they would have been condemned. I had no way of really removing condemn, so there was a 1 in 6 chance each of them would have died. If they had died, they would have immediately spawned in Slave Spirit, and then it would just escalate from there. And I know what's behind those 2 events because I did peek, but I'm not going to tell you guys what they are. It could have escalated pretty badly. Obviously, like I mentioned, the entire plan against this boss was to mitigate its aura by using a character that was immune to both disease and wilt, and essentially just go toe to toe against it. Overall, Shadow Lord is not the hardest boss. I would say probably the hardest boss is still Aisling. Even with her nerf, she's still reasonably tough, and just the setup of that particular encounter just makes everything harder for you. Cassithus and Alana are tough, but not really. It's not really difficult. It's just long, and part of that reason why it's long is simply because you don't have Remy with you, and most people build their Remy. And then besides Aisling, I would say probably the hardest fight was the Coffin. The Coffin revolves very heavily around resisting effects, which my team was never really good at that, with the exception of Shayless. And I didn't have Shayless with me because she got swallowed up by the Coffin. There's a lot of RNG aspects with that Coffin fight. I do like how it kind of includes everyone. So there's essentially a 1 in, like a 4 in 7 chance or 3 in 7 chance, depending on your party, of just gobbling up someone that's not being used in the active group anyway. But also, I definitely took full advantage of everything I had to try to minimize what that Coffin could do. If I had let those pixies live, that Coffin would have went flying everywhere, just smashing into people and doing ranged attacks, and then forcing us to get condemned and run next to it and then get gobbled up. So, like I said, a lot of tough fights, and obviously I'm using kind of top tier builds at this point. So it is what it is. Anyway, with all that said and done, let's go ahead and dive into story. We just fought a god. How are we going to do? So, Visage 460. The Shadow Lord's robed form began to deflate in front of them like a puncture balloon. Bright blue light escaped from within, draining it onto the floor and filling the room with a faint glow. Zeke watched the others gathered around the fallen body, their weapons still raised in nervous hands. He ran right past them, over to where Justice still lay. She hadn't moved once. He dropped to his knees beside her, jostling her shoulder with one hand. Her skin was icy under his grip. "Come on, Justice. You can't be dead." He pulled one of her wrists free, felt for a pulse, and found one. She was breathing so faintly he hadn't noticed at first. Huh? Justice opened one eye. The warmth rushed back into her skin, and her breath fogged the air in front of her. The other eye fluttered open. In front of her was Zeke's concerned face. "Zeke, you came for me?" "Couldn't keep me away," Zeke smiled, pulled her into a hug. Justice looked over his shoulder. "Oh, where's the Shadow Lord?" Zeke pulled away. "He tried to stop us, but we don't leave friends behind." You killed it?" Justice sat up and stretched each arm in turn. "How could... That's not possible." "That's what everyone thought." Zeke rose to his feet, offering a hand. Even though she hadn't been killed, she looked a bit haunted. Her wide eyes darted around the room. Zeke stood nearby, watching her. "Are you okay?" he asked reluctantly. "No, you couldn't have killed that creature." You don't know what it does to people, Zeke. She looked scared and paranoid, with sweat rolling down her face and her arms wrapped around her body. You don't know. He watched her panicking and wanted to hug her again, but thought better of it. The room around them was getting colder and colder by the moment. His own breath had started to fog the air, and he began to shiver. Zeke, Justice called. She moved to hide behind him, grabbing at his shirt. He's coming. He turned just in time to see the corpse of the Shadow Lord begin to rise again. The blue fog that had gathered around them flowed back toward it, filling the robe and inflating it back into a roughly human shape. It rose, taller and more imposing than it had been before they fought. How is it still alive? Zeke asked in a panic, looking up at the creature as it towered above them. Weapons made by mortals couldn't hurt me, though your effort is certainly commendable. The Shadow Lord hissed. Its voice seemed to come from all directions and echoed in the chamber. The group prepared to fight again, but the creature only chuckled. All around it, things began to move. Every corpse in the room, every skeletal figure, every half-rotten adventurer all rose together. Many picked up their fallen weapons, which were as decayed as their owners. Soon they were surrounded by an army of dead. The Shadow Lord's laughter boomed so loudly that Zeke covered his ears. Justice hid behind him, confused and scared. Well, wasn't that entertaining? Its voice was so loud it shook the earth above them. Several small bits of stone came loose and tumbled down. I have not had so much fun in decades. It turned on Zeke and Justice. Perhaps I will not kill you after all. I'm thinking you might be more amusing to me alive. For now. The Shadow Lord moved closer to Justice and looked down at her small quivering body. Though I must admit that I'll miss your presence, Justice. Justice began crying, and Zeke couldn't take it anymore. He stepped in and held her. She had no wounds on the surface, but it was obvious that her time spent with the Shadow Lord had done unseen damage. Leave with your lives, the Shadow Lord finally said, waving a hand, before I change my mind. They had everything they come for, and the Shadow Lord was offering them a way out, but Zeke couldn't help but feel like he wanted to try and kill him again anyway. Continue to My Time Here Is Over, 461. Oh, sorry, that's down here. Something rumbled far above them. Dust and rock began falling from the ceiling, crashing all around them. The Shadow Lord looked up as if only mildly interested in the structural collapse of its realm. Well, isn't that interesting? It looked down at them all, apparently locking its attention on Nightingale. It seems the denizens of this prison have discovered they are no longer trapped. I expect they will want their revenge on Greyhaven for locking them down here for so long. A massive chunk of the cavern fell on the other side of the room, shattering with a spray of dirt and rock. It'll be a massacre, the perfect chance to add souls to my service. It nodded to Nightingale in a mock gesture of respect. Goodbye, young one. I suspect we will meet again. So something to note, the audio file, or at least I think I might be using an old one. It says we will not meet again, but the text here says that otherwise. The Shadow Lord vanished with a flash of bright blue light, taking every ghost with him and plunging the room into darkness. They were alone, deep within the eyrie. We need to get out of here, Jalis shouted as another huge chunk of stone came tumbling down, landing in front of the door they'd used to get inside and burying it with a landslide of dirt. What do we do? Damocles yelled, looking desperately around for a way out. Sorry, Nightingale yelled. She could find us a way out. Do the players have a new owner? I don't believe we do. No, we do not. I'm safe. 468. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. Suri can lead us out. Rook called, his fingers enclosing around the pendant. Suri, can you hear me? She appeared a second later, a little more than a purple mote of light. She brightened as she saw Rook. Can you find another way out, like you did in the White Spires? He asked. This place is coming down on us. You're alive. Suri spun, her form moving through Rook's body and coming out the other side. Of course, she grinned. I've been wondering when you would need me to help you out. She zipped toward the throne and down the passage beyond, leaving a glowing trail behind her. Rook felt completely drained from everything they had been through, but even through the pain, they had to push on. They'd gotten what they needed, and escape was the only thing on his mind. 466, which is back the other way. Back to the surface. It seemed as though the Shadow Lord's magic had been the only thing holding the ancient rooms around its throne together. With its master gone, thousands of years of dark history were catching up with it. Whole floors gave way behind them. Ceilings crumbled, and caverns collapsed under the weight of the earth above. They ran with every last desperate drop of energy they had. They were aware of nothing but Suri's light ahead of them, guiding them past potential dangers and avoiding the worst concentrations of monsters. The farther they ran, the more familiar the passages became. Ahead, muted rays of light broke through the gloom. Together, the group climbed through the exit of the Eyrie. Luckily, anything that might have been trapped below was either escaping through a different exit or had already left. Nightingale collapsed on the nearest patch of cleared ground, gasping for air. Her lungs burned with each shuddering breath. Soon after, Zeke followed, collapsing nearby her, breathing just as hard. Shayless's face came into her view, and Nightingale knew what she was going to say. "We need to keep moving. We saved your friend, but now the city needs us." She looked just as tired as Nightingale, but she didn't let it slow her down. She had her own friends to protect. Somewhere back in Greyhaven, Abigail and Tyrael might soon be fighting for their lives. Okay, Nightingale panted, struggling to her feet. We can keep going. Do the players have the story flag a helping hand? Yes. Go to the flag check below. Do we have reluctant partnership? Yes. Continued below. Do the players have greater cause? No. No, we don't. Alright, so we go to back off. They hadn't walked 50 feet before Zephyr heard a sharp crack from the back of the group, followed by a meaty thud. He spun around in time to see Damocles standing over Echo's limp body. "What the fuck are you doing?" Zephyr shoved him back with a strangle strike and stood protective over her body. Rhea rushed over and dropped to her knees beside Echo. She felt out the back of her head, then rested 2 fingers against her neck. "She's just unconscious." Damocles folded his arms, unintimidated. "You heard her. She said the Soul Stitcher was only gone while we were in the Shadow Lord's domain. Either we restrain her now, or we wait for the Soul Stitcher to get back and she kills us." "That isn't your call to make," Zephyr shouted. "You sure as hell weren't going to do it," Damocles growled. "You're lucky I didn't slit her throat." Zephyr's face reddened. He swung one fist at Damocles' face. The man spun backward, nearly tumbling sideways. Damocles let out a howl and charged back at Zephyr. The impact caused Zephyr to fall back, but he rebounded and smacked into Damocles. "Zephyr!" Shayless's voice pierced the fighting. Suddenly hands were on him, yanking him up and away from Damocles. Patrick and Rook were across from him, pulling Damocles back. Ezra held onto his arm, squeezing tightly. Shayless stormed up to Zephyr. "Back off. You're on thin ice as it is. Don't pull any more shit like this, or I'll make certain you're locked up when we get back to Greyhaven." Ezra leaned in to whisper to Zephyr. "Calm down." Ezra said, "They're right. I know it hurts, but Echo needs to be restrained. They're not going to kill her. We won't let them." Zephyr locked eyes with Ezra for a moment, then pushed him away. He turned to Shayless. "Just don't hurt her," he said. Shayless turned and pointed at Patrick and Rook. "You two, tie her up. Damocles, try something like that one more time, and you'll be in the same cell as Zephyr. Now let's go. We don't have time for this." Greyhaven revisited 468. There was something very wrong with the forest. Zeke noticed it before they had even lost sight of the Eyrie. What had been a vibrant and thriving ecosystem had suddenly changed. Anything that wasn't a sturdy tree was completely trampled, which obscured the trail. Zeke wasn't good at reading tracks, but he didn't need to know that they weren't from normal animals. Midara's wildlife might have been strange, but they didn't usually rip huge chunks out of trees, light random fires, or shatter boulders for no reason. As darkness fell, the dangers of the forest never manifested. He heard nothing but their own footsteps. They found carcasses, too, of animals torn to shreds and picked to the bone. Shayless cursed louder with every new corpse and refused to let them stop to rest. Our worst-case scenario came true. Everything's headed straight for Greyhaven. Maybe they all went the same way out of herding instinct, Nightingale suggested. They'll give up once they reach a real city. Greyhaven isn't well protected, Patrick said matter-of-factly. Why should it be? It had an Aegis stone to protect everything dangerous locked away. Only ancient magic could break a shield like that. The city's peacekeepers never have to deal with anything more serious than an occasional barroom brawl. After a few more steps, they crested a ridge, and Zeke got his first view of Greyhaven. It was not the same peaceful city he had seen from his window in the Amaranthine. The light of glowstones had been replaced with raging fires, and bestial roars mingled freely with terrified screams. People were yelling, running, fighting, and dying. Creatures moved in packs through the streets. Small pockets of violent engagement could be seen in various districts. "We have to go help them," Nightingale yelled, drawing her weapon and pointing at a nearby group of civilians. They screamed as a soul butcher chased them down. She began stumbling down the slope toward a nearby street when she was stopped. "Wait." Shayla's caught her sister by the arm, yanking her back. "You're in no shape to be fighting. Plus, we can't fight an army of monsters by ourselves. There are hundreds of them. We need to get to the Amaranthine. Abigail and Tyrion are the only ones who can organize a defense." "We won't be using the gondolas," Patrick said, pointing. Zeke followed his gesture to the nearest building. It was a smashed ruin, and towers dangled precariously from the hovering stones above. None were intact on their side of the city. "There's no way we're going to get up to the castle without them," Damocles yelled, spinning around with his own weapon drawn. I could fly up there," Remy began, "and ask for them to send." A sudden explosion cut Remy short. The ground a few feet in front of Zeke opened, throwing him backward in a wave of dirt and rock. He shielded his face from a fierce blast of heat as a creature surfaced in front of him, clawing out of the ground. It was a massive serpentine and covered with magma and crystal protrusions. It rose from the ground, towering higher and higher. Zeke scrambled to his feet and backed up as quickly as he could. Just as the monster was bearing down on him, another explosion shook the air, tearing at his eardrums. He covered his face a second time, then turned his back to the monster. Several large metal balls hit the serpent in quick succession, tearing holes in its molten form. Its blood was like lava, setting everything it touched ablaze. The beast let out a screech and toppled to its side, sending molten rock splattering through the air like an erupting volcano. A familiar airship soared overhead, with smoke still rising from its cannons. It stopped in the air above them. Effie Grand leaned over the edge. The oppressor might not have been much compared to some airships, but she was tiny enough to maneuver through the chunks of floating debris and dangling cables like a pro. More importantly, it had a ton of guns. "Oi!" Effie yelled, looking down at them. You're in a bit of a jam down there. Care for a lift?" "Not a good time to be in the city." "Please," Zeke shouted, nodding frantically. Though the lava creature was dead, the sound of their brief engagement had already attracted the attention of several other creatures not far off. "You got it," Effie said enthusiastically, tossing a rope ladder down the railing. "Quickly now, some of these beasts can fly." Zeke waited near the back as the others climbed ahead of him. Effie's small crew helped most of them on board. He wasn't halfway up the ladder before the airship took off abruptly, nearly tearing his fingers from the rope. "Whoa!" he shouted, clinging to the ladder with all his might and locking both legs around one of the rungs. He could hear people shouting at him from above, and when he looked up, he saw Nightingale urging him along. He slowly climbed the rest of the ladder and rolled over the railing. "Thanks for the rescue," he muttered, slumping to the floor. "I wish you'd taken it a little slower at the end." Effie grinned down at him from the helm. "If you can't keep up, you get left behind. I like you and all, but not enough to let those monsters grab hold of the rope and pull my baby right out of the sky." "Take us to the Amaranthine," Shayla said, pointing, "and hurry." "Listen, Princess, this is my ship." Effie slammed her hand forward on the controls and they lurched up again. "And we're surrounded by a burning city. You don't need to tell me to hurry." Little islands and chunks of floating stone blurred past them, but Effie definitely avoided the debris. They slowed with a lurch after clearing the floating rocks. Effie raised her chin proudly and looked at Shayla's. "Fast enough for you, Your Highness?" she asked. "That was great," Shayla's commented. "Thanks for the rescue." Effie leaned on the controls, trying to look casual. "Aw, you know, right place, right time, and all that." She looked up suddenly and pointed. "Looks like there are a bunch of people out on the battlements. Should I set you down there?" Abigail and Tyrion were flanked by 2 dozen soldiers watching the city burn. "Yes," Shayla said. "Pull alongside the wall, let us off, then find a spot to dock. We might have another job for your ship." "Right." Effie turned, banking into the breeze and moving up the length of the wall. "But I'm not a warship. I can't go down there and fight for the city. One good hit and we're toast." "I know," Shayla said, glancing toward Nightingale. "We might need some transportation after this." Zeke hurried off with the others, having to jump the last foot or so as the approacher started drifting away again, leaving a nauseating drop visible below him as he hopped. Abigail glided over to them, shoving through the guards and raising her voice to carry over the wind. "By every god of the Erebus beneath us, you better have an explanation for this," she raged. "We told you not to harm the Aegis Stone." "Do the players have helping hand?" "Yes, we do." Just to verify. Yes, we have a helping hand. We got that when we saved Echo. Yes, and Zephyr's in the party, so we go to Brawl. Yep, just straight to Brawl. We didn't do this. Shayless didn't look away from Abigail. Patrick, bring her up. Patrick shoved Echo, who was still bound at the wrist, out of the group to stand beside Shayless. It's a long story, Abigail, and we don't have time. Shayless shook her head. But to sum it up, Echo here broke the Aegis Stone. She's being controlled by a hostile Esper, Zephyr interrupted. She's only the host. She didn't attack your city. Is that true? Tyrael asked. Maybe, Shayless admitted. Tyrael stepped forward. Guards, take her. He motioned and a pair of guards hurried forward and roughly grabbed Echo by the arms. Be careful, Damocles urged. The Esper was driven off, but we have no idea for how long. You need to lock her up tight. Echo is a victim as much as any of you, Zephyr shouted. If she broke the Aegis Stone, she'll be held accountable, Tyrael said, closing the distance to Zephyr. They eyed each other carefully. I won't take any chances. You can't blame her for the actions of a monster, Zephyr said. She would not do this of her own accord. I don't care what she would or wouldn't do, Tyrael said. Look over the wall. Hear the screams? There are thousands of people down there, and we don't have an army to protect them. Zephyr took a step closer. You can't. Nightingale rushed forward and took hold of Zephyr's arm. This isn't the time, she said pleadingly. Whatever happens to Echo, we need to lock her up in case the Soul Stitcher returns. But Greyhaven is burning right now. You can convince them of your girlfriend is innocent later. Zephyr shrugged her off, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. We have a secure cell that will do for now, Abigail said, gesturing to a nearby stairwell. We can continue this conversation inside. It isn't safe out here. Fixing this, 473. So we're at what page are we? Okay. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Fixing this. Nightingale had a hard time appreciating the opulence of the Amaranthine with the chaos in the city below. The throne room's spectacular view allowed for a clear view of the devastation. Many of the guards had joined them on their way to the top, watching the night sky for any sign of attack, their weapons at the ready. There's no chance of holding the city without the Aegis Stone, said one of the guards. We're evacuating as you ordered, concentrating as many citizens as we can in the Amaranthine. How is the food situation? Abigail asked, taking her seat in the dark throne. She didn't relax in it as she had during Nightingale's first visit. She perched on the edge, ready to snap into action at a moment's notice. Can we survive a siege? With respect, Lady Abigail, a siege is the least of our worries. My last casualty report stood at 200, and that was an hour ago. We'll be dead before a siege even starts. This isn't a mindless flood. These creatures have been waiting for their revenge. They are coordinated and methodical. We need to replace the Aegis Stone, Tyrael said, or any defense we make is doomed. Remind me again where it came from, Damocles said. Something about a dragon? Yes, Zeke said. My parents convinced a demon named Rubicon to send them into Arkala. They killed a dragon there and used its heart to make the Aegis Stone. He stepped forward. My dad's dead, and there's no way we can wait for my mom. So that leaves me. Hopefully this demon will be willing to do the same for me. Yeah, that's not happening, Shayless muttered. Are you kidding? After everything we just went through, you guys aren't ready for Arkala. Tyrael put a hand on her shoulder. Shayless, they just survived a trip into the Eyrie. I don't think there's anyone in Elenia more ready than they are. Besides, if Zeke wants to follow in his parents' footsteps, it's his choice. Shayless folded her arms defiantly. I can't let you do this alone. Balthazar had lots of kids, but Lo only had 2. If our families aren't going to bond through marriage like everyone wants, we should at least watch each other's backs. I'm not letting you wander off to get killed in Arkala. Patrick stepped up next to her. I'm in. Abigail rose to her feet in a rush, moving to join them. I'm coming too. Greyhaven is my city. Tyrael put out a hand to stop her. Abigail, you can't leave. Greyhaven won't survive without us to coordinate the defense. We need to give them enough time to replace the Aegis Stone before we're overrun. If both leaders of Greyhaven suddenly disappeared... Give me a moment. Sorry about that. Weed whackers and lawnmowers outside my window. So let's try to get this done. Alright, Tyrael put out a hand to stop her. Abigail, you can't leave. Greyhaven won't survive without us to coordinate the defense. We need to give them enough time to replace the Aegis Stone before we are overrun. If both leaders of Greyhaven suddenly disappeared, it would look like we abandoned the city. Morale couldn't take it. We need as many people here holding the city as possible, especially since... Both leaders? Abigail asked. Tyrael nodded. You need to take the fastest ship to Kastakov. It's the closest city with an army, and Ida Zhang could send help. Sorry about that again. You could bring 2 or 3 guards, and the rest would stay here. We must protect the Amaranthian at all costs. If anything reaches the float core. Why are you staying? Your family runs Kastakov. They'll give you an army. But meanwhile, I can protect my own damn city. I'm not a helpless damsel. But I am, Tyrael replied. Don't you see? If my family thinks I'm in danger, they'll have to give you our soldiers. There won't be any temptation to force me to abandon the city. If you think young Zhang would sit idly by if he knew I was here, you're crazy. Fine. She slumped back into her chair, defeated. Shouldn't you evacuate? Damocles asked. Abigail's wings fluttered for a brief moment, and she turned to him with a frown. Someone has to defend the Amaranthian's float core. If it were destroyed, the Amaranthian would fall and crush the city below. We've been evacuating everyone in the castle. We don't have the airships to get them farther away, and anyone who tries to flee on foot is hunted and killed. It won't come to that, Shayla said. We'll go into Arkala, we'll get reinforcements, and Tyrael will protect the Amaranthian. We can fix this. Do the players have soul judgment? No. Do the players have the story flag soul judgment? No. Go to let me help. Hey, I can... Patrick spun to the side, facing the newcomer. In all the madness, he had forgotten Aisling was there. She hurried into the throne room from the transit pad, and a pair of guards landed behind her a second later. She tried to dodge out of the way, but they were too fast. They grabbed her arms and pulled her to a stop. We're sorry, Lord and Lady Zhang, one of them said, bowing. We know you weren't to be disturbed, but Abigail waved her forward. Patrick stepped to the front of the group, though he wasn't worried about Abigail or Tyrael doing anything unbecoming to his good friend. Aisling had not committed a single crime in their city, and they understood the details of what she'd done. They had no reason to use the same violent punishment that might be waiting for her in Ramstead. Look at me, Abigail ordered, and Aisling obeyed. What do you think you can do for us? You're here as a prisoner, awaiting judgment. If we let you go, who's to say you don't just run off? Aisling shrugged. You're short on soldiers. Can you really afford to turn me down? I'll fight, so long as I'm a free woman when the city's safe again. Give me your word, and I'll do anything you ask. I don't want to run for the rest of my life. Patrick stepped forward. She'll keep her word, Tyrael. Aisling's got herself mixed up in things she shouldn't have, but she's a good person. She may want a pardon, but I think she'd fight even if you'd said no. She wouldn't watch innocent people die. Release her, Tyrael said. Fetch the weapons we confiscated. Tyrael returned his attention back to Aisling. You will remain here to fight beside me and protect the float core. If we survive until Shayless returns with a new Aegis Stone, you will have your pardon. You got to be joking, Remy said. Gage growled at her side. This is bullshit. She's just... Nightingale stepped up in front of her. Her face was pale and sickly, and there were bags under her eyes. If Remy had tried to push past her, she would have knocked her over. Please, Nightingale said. The Maluma was winning. Remy forced herself to nod. Of course, Knight, I'm sorry. Do the players have story flag last of her coterie? No. What's wrong with her? 475. Nightingale held onto a pillar with one hand to keep herself upright. She was so exhausted that she was barely conscious, and she wasn't the only one. It was a miracle they had even survived their trip to the Eyrie. Tyrael strode past her, his expression resolute. He made it all the way to the transport pad before Abigail stopped him by the arm, then turned to look at them as though she just remembered that anyone else was there. What about the rest of you? Nightingale was the first to answer. I'm going with them, obviously. She said. She let go of the pillar and made her way to where Zeke and Shayla stood in the center of the room. The world rushed up to meet her as she dropped to one knee. Zeke hurried over, offered hand, and helped her back to her feet. You can barely walk, Teriel said, watching as Nightingale struggled to right herself. Shayla folded her arms, glaring at her sister. Don't lie, Knight. We've seen what the Maluma is doing to you. You aren't strong enough for a trip like this. You should come with me to Kastakov, Abigail suggested. Ida Zhang might know more about your condition. Even if she doesn't, at least you'd be... Abigail fuzzed away along with everyone else in the room. One by one, their allies turned indistinct, leaving Nightingale alone in a vast expanse of white marble, with the stars glaring angrily down overhead. Sorry about that. Sorry for the breaks. Like I said, I'm dealing with leaf blowers, weed whackers, and lawn mowers, apparently. The Maluma appeared before her, its glow no longer seeming so hideous to her. It wafted through one of the nearby pillars before coalescing over her head. I have a proposal, it said. I've got a proposal for you, too, Nightingale replied, watching as the Maluma drifted toward the railing as though it, too, watched the destruction of the city below. The world around her was gone, and all she could see and hear was the Maluma. She threw it a rude gesture. You get out of my body, and I don't send you to hell. The Maluma laughed from every mouth at once. Each one produced a slightly different voice. The seeds of my desires are already in your mind, though you do not recognize them. She felt a hand on her shoulder, and she spun around violently. Shayla's face came into focus. Nightingale, are you all right? Nightingale blushed, realizing at that moment that every single person in the throne room had seen and heard her. It's the Maluma, Nightingale admitted. It wants to make an offer. Oh, Shayla let go, smiling slightly. She turned to face where the Maluma had been. You can shove your offer up your ass. You might say otherwise if you heard it. The Maluma solidified in a bright flash of magic, drawing even more of what little strength Nightingale had left. She gasped before she could fall to her knees. Enemy jumped over and grabbed her, holding her upright. All around the room, guards drew their weapons. Abigail stared openly, clearly horrified. Guards, Tyrael shouted. Surround that thing. Won't do any good, Remy put up her hand. We can't hurt it, but the good news is that it won't hurt us either. The Maluma's amorphous shape seemed to drift toward Remy, undulating as it went like the pseudopod of a gigantic amoeba. Even beings as mechanical as you can be conditioned to the correct response with repetition. Violence between us serves no purpose, you powerless rulers of this insignificant city. It turned to Nightingale, all of its eyes suddenly focusing on her. I made an error in judgment, Nightingale. I treated you as everyone before. I imagined you were as weak. Yet you have proven yourself competent and resilient, traits I did not expect. I will tell you the truth. Nightingale's eyes rolled into the back of her head as a fleeting moment of nausea overtook her. She braced herself on Remy with a shaky hand, then turned toward the Maluma. Whatever you're going to say it. The Maluma shrank a little in the air, becoming half of its previous size. Charon did not create me, nor did he enslave me. I chose to serve him because he promised me something no other could, safety from the great bounty. You have now learned of its dangers. You have seen its enforcers and its terrible retribution, the terrible retribution they bring upon those who violate the sanctity of the realms. I have long taken an interest in this world, yet all I have done here has been accomplished in fear and shadow. Charon promised me a body of my own so that I might remain on Middara forever, hidden from those that mean me harm. I'm sure that's working out great for you, Remy said venomously. Indeed. The Maluma sounded reluctant. Charon is little more than a corpse in the suspended tomb. The anointed saw to that. His power has waned tremendously over the last decade. Many of his servants are dead or in prison. There's no reason for me to tie my fate to that of a dead god if others can get me what I want. Wait, Terry lowered his sword. The suspended tomb? Isn't that off the coast south of here? Yes. Again, the Maluma sounded reluctant. Zephyr should have failed. He should have been ground into ashes years ago. But Charon's attachment to his previous nature stayed his hand. Pitiful weakness. All you want is a body, then? Nightingale asked. In exchange? The Maluma turned to face her again. It curled around Nightingale with its many eyes and teeth as though it was going to swallow her. Your life. You must realize by now how close I am to claiming your body and mind. This deal would give you the chance to save them. All you must do is provide me a willing vessel, a body that will accept me, one that is human, one that the great bounty won't suspect. Give me that, and you may keep yours. Nightingale shivered. She couldn't imagine passing on the nightmare of living with the Maluma to someone else. Who would be willing to do that? But the Maluma wasn't finished. I also know where to find the last piece of the Pontifex. Nightingale froze. She could almost feel tears welling up behind her eyes. Maybe there was a way out of her nightmares after all. There was an end in sight. You have my word, she said. What? Remy let her go of her arm, staring in sudden shock. Did you hear what it wants? You don't get to choose, Nightingale screamed. None of you do. Or does one of you have a better idea? Her voice cracked and tears streamed down her face. I can feel it in my head. I'm losing myself. It's either a deal or I'm gone. Then we agree, the Maluma whispered, his voice suddenly gentler than any of her friend's expressions. Nightingale nodded, ignoring the wicked grin that spread across its many mouths and its fierce teeth flashing at her. It suddenly seemed to shift and expand in the air, back to its normal size. The final piece of the Pontifex is located in the crypts beneath the white spires. It was my target the night you met my previous host. Really? Nightingale swore under her breath, collecting herself. She took a few deep breaths, shook off the last of her tears. We could have been done already? I suspect that Vault Lord Hografar recognized my intentions and moved the artifact before we return, the Maluma continued. Else you might already be rid of me. We should have already been done with this, Zeke shouted at the Maluma. Damn it, why didn't you say something? The Maluma didn't answer. Its outline fizzed, and it vanished with a pop and one last whisper into Nightingale's mind. Our promise is struck. Remember this bargain, or the stay of your execution will be lifted. Do the players have story flag new owner? No. So a shaking proposition, 478. Justice cleared her throat to get everyone's attention. If you can assemble the Pontifex, I should be able to use it to get the Maluma out of Nightingale's body and seal it in a new body. That's good, Rook said, watching her with obvious concern. But Nightingale has been trying to get it out since we first learned about it. No one is going to want that. Justice shook her head. I can do the magic, that's it. I don't know where we can find a volunteer. Not me, Rook said. Maybe not anyone. There are other creatures who might, but it said specifically they wanted a human body. Why not just kill it? Remy spat. If we can get it out, we're done. We'll need the last piece, a Pontifex piece, in either case, Damocles said flatly. I think we should focus on getting it and keep our options open otherwise. Maybe we'll come up with something, or maybe we'll just kill it. No reason to decide now. Surrey appeared beside Rook in a flash of violet light bright enough to overcome the chandelier of glowstones and the distant starlight. She provoked a few stares from Terry and Abigail, but they didn't object. I remember the path you took to the White Vaults, Surrey said. If you go, I can help you find it. The sooner we put an end to this, the sooner we can be out of constant danger. She smiled at him as she twisted in the air. That sounds like a plan, Rook said. Arkala would be a little much for me. But the vaults are where this started, so that can be where it ends, and we'll need justice with us. Shayless nodded in her agreement. Zeke, Patrick, and I will head to Arkala. The rest of you can go with Nightingale. Damocles placed a hand on Nightingale's shoulder. Surprised, she met his eyes. Whatever Hografar is, he's not a Shadow Lord. We just survived the Eyrie. We'll get the last piece. He didn't know how awful Hografar was, nor did he have any idea what going deep into the White Vaults of Valenia meant. But Nightingale found herself smiling despite that. Damocles looked so optimistic, and she couldn't bring herself to ruin it. What is a Hografar anyway? Damocles asked. Rook raised his hand with a grim expression, but Nightingale cut him off. Like an orc from D&D, only bigger, she joked. Then we won't need to hide, Damocles declared. We'll do the Jong family a service and clean the vaults while we're there. No need to thank me, Zeke. Rook leaned into Nightingale's ear to whisper. We'll have to tell him the truth before we get there. Sure, Nightingale waved him away. Let him enjoy his optimism for now, though. Is Zephyr in the party? Yes. 480. That's not everything we have to talk about, Shayless said, just as everyone began splitting into groups. She stopped in front of Zephyr. We need to talk about you. He straightened slightly. After everything you've done, do you really think you're going to leave here a free man? The siege of Greyhaven is your fault. I know what sentence my father would demand. Zephyr folded his arms, completely unafraid. You cannot afford to sacrifice my help, whatever the cause. Greyhaven burns. You don't have the resources to imprison me when you need every warrior to protect the innocent. You could kill me, but you would only be sacrificing the life of the person most likely to save your sister. Oh yeah, saving Nightingale, Shayless yelled. The one you tried to murder last week. Another life sacrifice for the greater good. Nothing to see here. You sentenced the city to death to further your crusade against an entity that I don't even know exists, and you expect... He's real, Nightingale interrupted. Shayla stopped and stared. The Malumas and Saphir's stories match. He's been a dick about it. But he's not lying. Fine, Shayla said irritably. Sharon or no, you don't get to sacrifice others' lives. That isn't how this works. Saphir stopped, looking Nightingale up and down. While the Maluma is one of Sharon's agents, it isn't controlling her yet. I mean her no harm as long as she remains free from its control. You have my word. Worthless, Shayla spat. I've heard promises from murders before. They don't count for shit. He glared. This city burns, your sister is dying, and Sharon is the architect. He looked at Nightingale again and softened his voice. We have the same goals, Princess. Greyhaven can't afford another enemy, and you need my help. Shayla glowered as she folded her arms. I say we lock him up. He's insane, and his friends must be too, if they fight with him. But I think it should be your decision, Knight. He didn't hurt me. He'll never let me go. He'll never let you go, the Luma said in the back of Nightingale's head. Let him rot. Nightingale looked down, desperate for inspiration. Maybe her friends would have some advice. The party must make a decision. We can lock up the Anointed, or we can just let them keep helping. Like, as already pointed out, we don't exactly have the resources to keep them, and more than likely they'll break out if we imprison them at this point. So we're going to go ahead and 479, he's an asset. Nightingale hesitated, looking away from her sister and up at Tyrael. Saphir is dangerous, but he's a powerful asset. I know he's half insane, but I think that if he comes with me, he can help with Hografar. Are you serious? Shayla asked, stunned. After everything he's done, didn't he already try to kill you once? He wants to get rid of the Maluma as much as I do, Nightingale said flatly. Though she didn't agree with Saphir's actions, she saw the merit in them. She couldn't condemn him to prison because he'd done what he thought was best for Alenia. He wants to save the world from something we barely understand. If he did it the wrong way, but what else was he supposed to do? What about his companions? Tyrael asked. Would you spare them as well? They follow him, Nightingale said. It wouldn't be right to separate them. They keep Saphir grounded. He'd be too dangerous to bring otherwise. If that's what you want. Tyrael gestured to the guards. We can't spare the soldiers to imprison him right now anyway. I'm sure half the city would be clamoring for an execution if they knew, but they'll have to wait. Saphir nodded deferentially to Nightingale, and for a moment she was taken aback, wondering if he actually realized what she'd done for him. We know where the last piece of the Pontifex is, Nightingale said. I want you to come with me and recover it. She looked at Bria and Ezra. You're welcome to join us. If not, you can go back to the Anointed. The fight against Sharon is here, Ezra said. Bria nodded in her agreement. I have a condition, Nightingale said, raising a finger. You help me get rid of the Luna, and the Pontifex is yours. After that, you get the hell out of my life. Zephyr nodded. On that we agree, Princess. Who are you? 480. Effie shot up the transport platform in a blur, smacking face first into Tyrael. She righted herself quickly, bowed, and backed away. Sorry. I didn't see where I was going. My city is besieged, and strangers are free to blunder into the throne room? Tyrael frowned, his face stern. Who the hell are you? He reached down and tried to brush the grime off his clothes. I hope my guards had a good reason for permitting you into my presence. Yeah. She stood up straight, looking as confident as she could. She was still 2 feet shorter than Tyrael. My name is Effie Grand. I run the ferry through the Middle Passage. I also saved their lives. Effie pointed back at the rest of the group. You won't find a better pilot anywhere in Alenia. Great, Tyrael said blandly, waving her away. You may go. Wait! Zeke shoved his way over to her. We need Effie's airship. She flies where we're going all the time. I'll need our airship to make it to Kastakov in time, Abigail said. But would you let us hire you? They aren't passing through the middle passage. They're confronting Rubicon directly. You probably heard the rumors. You don't need to tell me, Effie raised an eyebrow. I know more about that passage than almost anybody. He knows what I want, Zeke motioned to Zeke. Go on. You better still have it. Zeke looked confused for a moment, but then remembered the card in his pocket. He fished around for a few seconds, dislodging bits of metal and an empty potion bottle before finally pulling it out. The crumpled and stained card contained a faded illustration. He winced, holding it away from her. You mean this? She snatched it from his hand, darted forward, and thrust the card into Cheryal's face. I want this. Cheryl took the card and smoothed it with 2 fingers. You want Abraxas cards. Her face went from excitement to annoyed. I want what's on the card, dope. She snatched it back and folded her arms. You want a battleship. Cheryl looked shocked. Effie grinned wildly. We've got a prince looking for a demon. You're trying to save a city so totally overwhelmed that it doesn't stand a chance otherwise. One airship upgrade seems a tiny price to pay. Tyrael nodded at Zeke. Is she serious? He nodded. Always. I suppose, if you pull it off, that sounds fair, Tyrael said. The royal treasury won't do us any good if we're dead. Effie squealed enthusiastically, wrapped her arms around Zeke in a brief and embarrassed hug. Then she let go and skipped back toward the transport platform. We'll be ready to go when you are. Zeke winced, looking away awkwardly. I'm sorry about her, he said. I thought she was going to stay on her ship. Tyrael patted him roughly on the back. Good luck. You'll need it. He moved past Zeke to hug Shayless and Patrick. Abigail joined them by the platform for final farewells. Be safe, and Greyhaven is depending on you. Official airship 481. The Oppressor launched without fanfare. Nightingale found a place to lean off the railing and watch the city below. Getting a good look at the chaos she'd been at least partially responsible for causing. Most of the fires had died down, though they raged completely out of control in one outer quarter. The engines, the wind, and the altitude covered up the sounds of battle as the city faded into the distance. How many more people are going to die stuck in their homes? She smelled something else in the air, maybe cigarette smoke. She looked up and found Zeke watching from over the railing beside her. He puffed on a cigarette. If we survive this, we've got to get you into vaping, she said. Forever a hater, Zeke smiled as he made his way over. It's okay. I won't tell anyone that you secretly like the smell of smoke. Nightingale rolled her eyes. Hey, Zeke. Yeah? Are you a little excited? She avoided his eyes and kept her fingers wrapped tightly around the railing. To fight a dragon? Hell yeah. Zeke took a long drag, then blew out a cloud. The wind stole it away, turning it into a faint trail behind him. Nightingale met his eyes. You get to follow in your dad's footsteps. Are you excited to get rid of the Maluma? He asked after a pause. That's not an answer, she replied. Zeke shook his head. It wasn't a question. He took one last long hit, then flicked the burning embers over the edge of the ship. Together they watched the faint glow fade away. We're both facing monsters. Maybe for Patrick and Shayless, going to kill a dragon is just about saving Greyhaven. Or maybe it's about their allegiance to Abigail and Tyrael. But you get a chance to see what your dad went through, Nightingale said. You get to connect with him, even though you'll never meet him. Yeah, he agreed. And for Remy, getting the Pontifex will help you out, and Damocles wants revenge. But none of us can know what having the Maluma is like. He grinned and put an arm around her shoulder. If nothing else, you can see that the spark that he'd always loved about her was back. The Maluma wasn't sucking the life out of her anymore. Maybe they really did have a chance. It's exciting, he admitted. Scary as shit, but exciting. What about her? Nightingale asked, glancing over his shoulder. She didn't push him away. He turned and saw Justice looking out over the horizon. She had her eyes closed as the wind whipped against her hair, turning it into a tangled mess. She reached up and resting a thumb against the Pontifex around her neck for a moment. What about her? Zeke asked. Do you think she's going to be okay? Nightingale turned her attention back to Zeke. We don't know what the Shadow Lord put her through. She's strong, he said. Look at what she's already gone through. Hell, look at what we've all been through. She'll be okay. Effie called from behind them, loudly enough to startle them both. Hey! We're going to the point of no return, like super dangerous, scary territory. Last chance to back out. Zeke finally let go of Nightingale and waved at Effie. Is that what you want? What I want is my battleship, Effie answered. I hope you don't want to bitch out. Zeke waved a dismissive hand. We aren't. Effie put a hand on her hip. I'm serious, Zeke Zhang. You have to survive this. No Zeke, no battleship. Our mission is clear, Captain Effie Grant, he said, saluting as dramatically as he could. Take us in. Effie didn't look amused. All right. Everybody get ready. The demon might just blow us to shit. We'll know in a few minutes. You've saved Justice and retrieved the second piece of the Pontifex. Reveal medium hidden card UM53 and gain the second piece of the Pontifex story relic. All injured party members are no longer injured, and Justice is no longer unselectable. The family's all together. What's the number? 53. So, second piece of the Pontifex, passive. When determining the force of a spell, if a skull is rolled, your spell still fails to affect the target, but you're no longer dealt magic damage. So, one of the detriments of casting spells is at least somewhat negated. And Justice can hold on to that, since she's already holding on to it anyway. Continue to Heart of the Dragon, 482. Nightingale found her sister near the bow of the ship, leaning heavily on the railing and letting one hand drag through the clouds in. Hey, sis. Shayless looked up with an exhausted grin. You're still awake, I see. Yeah. Nightingale leaned beside her, staring out into the night sky. There was no more city beneath them, just an endless crags of unfriendly rock. Do you really think that this Arcala plan will work? Shayless shrugged. I've heard Ida tell stories about it. She hesitated. It won't be easy. Convincing a demon to send us into another world to kill a dragon and bring its heart back, it's insane. She finally saw Nightingale's worried expression. What about you? Your trip doesn't sound easier. Nightingale shrugged. The Maluma is keeping true to its word. It hasn't bothered me at all. She hugged the railing and leaned over to look down. I think having to deal with Hogrifar is less intimidating than a dragon. At least we've seen it before. You guys are going in blind. Shayla shook her head. We'll make it, though. I'm starting to think our family's legacy is one of dumb luck. I thought Mom and Dad were brilliant and powerful, but maybe not. Nightingale let Shayla pull her into a hug. When we get through all of this, you're getting into the demiurge. No questions asked, Shayla said. I don't think any of us could have handled herself as well as you have. Nightingale gazed around, not focusing on anything in particular. I haven't thought about the demiurge in a while. I wonder how Khufu is doing. Do you think he even knows where I'm gone? Shayla grinned weakly. He followed you from Earth, didn't he? I'm surprised he hasn't found you already. Yeah. Nightingale stared out over the cracks. Here and there, something green poked through the rocks, spreading thin leaves toward the rising sun. There were even a few flowers down there. After everything we've been through, the demiurge is going to be a breeze. And there you go. That is all of Chapter 5 and all of Middara Unintentional Malum Act 1. So, sorry for all the interruptions. I know the scheduling for the lawnmowers and stuff are always, it seems to change every week, to be honest. In any case, we did finish up. Overall, I greatly enjoy this game. I mean, I would not be doing a 90-part Let's Play if I did not enjoy the game. I've played through the game once on my own already. I'm already doing a second playthrough on my own with promo cards. And when scheduling lines up, I'm playing with two different groups, one of which is in the beginning of Chapter 4 now, and the other one's in the beginning of Chapter 2. It's really cool kind of seeing the various builds in this game. But I think I'll talk a little bit more about that next time. There is going to be one more video after this, because obviously there's a bunch of new cards we need to read about. And then I will talk about what's going to probably come up in the future. So until then, I am the Depressed Eora, and this was Middara on Tabletop Simulator. I'll see you guys next time.